back, most of you who have made it this far. Dr. Jason W. Morrison, theologist. I'm trying to do a theological audit, which is straightening out theology. In the Watchtower study article 41 of the Watchtower study edition for October 2019, Staying Faithful Through the Tribulation, and it's turned out to be a bit of a rabbit hole of theological mess suited to their organisation. But I've come up to this one, paragraph 12. How has the faithful and discreet slave been preparing us for what is coming in the future? Now, identifying the faithful and discreet slave, oh my gosh, I don't know how they've come up with the idea that they are the faithful and discreet slave, but nevertheless they have. And it's this guy, a bunch of people, the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society governing body. I don't know all the I know Anthony Morris, I know Garrett Loesch, Jeffrey Jackson, Samuel Hurd, Stephen Lett. Not sure of this bloke, and I'm not sure of that bloke, but I do believe, is that Cook? That guy there, I'm not sure, but this is the governing body of the Jehovah Witnesses. Interesting bunch of people. They're leading the deception. To be honest, the only way I can say it is they're leading the deception, but these people are highly theologically deceived. I don't know how else you can put it. It's just the way it is. But thinking they're the faithful and discreet slave of Matthew. And I think we'll go to Matthew 24 in its entirety. This passage is gone over and over. People have gone over and over this again and again and again. Who really is the faithful and discreet slave whom his master appointed over his domestics to give them food? Give them their food at the proper time. Happy is that slave if his master on coming finds him doing so. Well, the poor old faithful and discreet slave's in for a shock because they've been lying to their members. Now, I do know that the Berean picket man, here he is here, he's uploaded a new video, and it's examining Matthew 24, part 5, the answer. I think this goes for 26 minutes, and I'm going to put this in now. I'm sure he won't mind. He's got a really good subscriber base. Very intelligent man. I'm going to run his video now and see how we go with this idea that the governing body thinks they're the faithful and discreet slave of Matthew 24. My goodness me. I've talk about use religion as a business shopfront. These guys are the best in the business. I tell you, they've made billions, not millions, billions out of religion. So I'm going to run Berean pickets now, and we'll have a talk at the end.
Anyway, the reason for this video is I need to debunk the governing body my way, once and for all, definitively, leaving no room for doubt, and without getting all bogged down in a lot of literature and scripture reading, because I want to appeal to your logic and common sense on the matter. So I hope that you find this educational, enlightening, and I especially hope that current Jehovah's Witnesses are watching this. And please stick around all the way to the end, because I have this broken down into 4 main problems that are going to start easy and build in intensity and build off each other until we reach the climax at the end. Please stay around for the whole thing or you'll miss the knockout punch. So when I say that I'm going to be debunking the governing body, what I mean is I'm going to be debunking their claim to be this faithful and discreet slave, or their faithful and discreet slave doctrine, in which they claim to be God's only organization on earth. See, once upon a time in Watchtower land, there was no governing body. When Charles Taze Russell started the organization, it was just him as president. He wrote pretty much everything that the society published, and it was all his way or the highway. Now, of course, like everything else that Watchtower teaches, the identity of the faithful and discreet slave has changed over the years. So, at first, it was Charles Taze Russell, then it was Judge Rutherford, who then made it the Watchtower organization, who then changed it to the anointed, or the remnant of the 144,000 left on earth. And now today, it's taught that the faithful and discreet slave is just the governing body. How convenient that new light turned out to be for them, huh? So current teaching is, in 1914, Jesus returned invisibly. In 1918, he inspected all the world's religions. And in 1919, he appoints Watchtower as his sole channel of communication to people on earth. And how is this done? Through the parable Jesus gave at Matthew 24:45 about the faithful and discreet slave being appointed master over all his belongings if the master returns and finds him doing what he instructed him to do. Now, I'm going to get back to that parable later, but this is a parable that Watchtower uses as a prophecy to claim that they were selected in 1919 by Jesus Christ as God's only organization on earth. In 1895, Maria Taze Russell. In 1895, Charles Taze Russell's wife, Maria, suggested that old Chucky himself just might be the faithful and discreet slave of Matthew 24:45. To which old CT replied, "No, Maria, I could not possibly be the faithful and discreet slave, you say, Yeah, that's the ticket." And though he never did claim that title for himself publicly, privately he did, and so did most of the Bible students at that time. If you ask any Jehovah's Witness today, they'll generally acknowledge that yes, Charles Taze Russell was the first faithful and discreet slave of Watchtower. This all brings me to problem number 1. If the teaching is that the faithful and discreet slave wasn't chosen until 1919, how could Charles Taze Russell have been the faithful and discreet slave as early as 1895? Oh, but Jeff Peff, wait a minute. They didn't teach that Jesus came in 1914 back then. They taught that he came in 1874. I know. But that doesn't matter because they still teach today that Jesus chose them in 1919, but that Russell was still one of the faithful and discreet slave before 1919. And that doesn't add up. Like I said, I'm going to start easy. So you Jehovah's Witnesses, stay with me here. You may want to put on your critical thinking caps for the rest of these. All right, moving on to problem number 2. When would a master appoint a slave? It's a simple question. Would it be before he went away or after he went away? Let's look at it this way. Suppose a young couple with small children wanted to have a date night, a night out alone, say a dinner and a movie. What would they need to do? That's right, hire a babysitter. So, would they just leave the kids alone and head out to the restaurant and hope somebody stepped up and babysat their kids? Probably not. Would they leave the kids home alone, head out to the restaurant, and then start calling babysitters, hoping one of them was available to rush over and babysit their kids that they left home alone? Doesn't work that way. You hire the babysitter before you go out on date night, right? And Jesus would do no less than that, because the Bible shows that Jesus clearly left Peter in charge before he went away, didn't he? So anyway, the scripture in Matthew 24:45 is a parable. Jesus often quoted from the scriptures, and this parable is a reference to Joseph and how Joseph was a very faithful and wise servant to both Potiphar and to Pharaoh, to the extent that Joseph was appointed over all his belongings. The scriptures say that Joseph's master didn't even have to worry about anything except for the food that he was eating. So that's the thought that Jesus was putting into his apostles so that they understood what Jesus was going to expect from them upon his return. That's all it is. Are we good? Still got those critical thinking caps on? Let's move on to problem number 3. So to reiterate, current teaching is that Jesus came in 1914, inspected in 1918, appointed in 1919. This appointment was based on the slave giving spiritual food at the proper time. This couldn't be any spiritual food. It had to be absolute truth. Remember, Jesus was comparing all the world's religions. So this had to be truth. Makes sense, doesn't it? Now, let's take a look at what Watchtower was teaching in 1918 when Jesus was inspecting all the world's religions. That's right, boys and girls. It was the finished mystery book. You current Jehovah's Witnesses, you should go online and look this book up for yourself. You can find it. You can find a PDF, and you can read it for yourself. You ought to see some of the nuggets of truth in this book. Among the many truths in the finished mystery book was a list of 88 prophecies that confirm that Jesus returned invisibly in 1874. So let's get this straight. Jesus returns in 1914, inspects in 1918, and finds Watchtower teaching that he already returned in 1874. What's more, in 1919, Watchtower publishes Millions Now Living Will Never Die, which claimed that in 1925 they would see the return of all the faithful men of old, David and Jacob and Isaac, and they would all return to live in Jerusalem, which later on was changed to San Diego to live with Judge Rutherford at Beth Sarim. But you guys can look that up on your own. Anyway, the point of that book was that millions of people in 1919 were still going to be alive in 1925 to see this, and therefore they'd walk right into the kingdom and never have to die. Look how that turned out. So, was that truth? Are you telling me that Jesus in 1918 looked at what the Watchtower was teaching that was supposedly truth and chose them based on that teaching? There is no possible way that Jesus chose that organization. Number one, because Jesus never did return in 1874 or 1914. And two, if he did, they weren't teaching the truth anyway. That's all I got to say about that one. And now, behold, problem number 4. This is conclusive. This is the best one because we're going to consider what the governing body, as the faithful and discreet slave, have to say about themselves. Hit it!
Whereas Jesus' teachings and the written word of God are inspired, the faithful and discreet slave is not inspired.
The governing body is neither inspired nor infallible. Therefore, it can err in doctrinal matters or in organizational direction. In fact, the Watchtower Publications Index includes the heading Beliefs Clarified which lists adjustments in our scriptural understanding since 1870. Of course, Jesus did not tell us that his faithful slave would produce perfect spiritual food.
That one gets me every time. Jesus never said the spiritual food would be perfect. Nah, 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 nah. Got ya. Ha. So this is how they weasel out of old light. Oh, we're not perfect. We make mistakes. We get stuff wrong. How exactly does that work? Because this.
Today, Jehovah provides direction to the slave through Jesus. Jesus, in turn, provides direction for his people through the faithful and discreet slave.
So it goes from Jehovah through Jesus and then to the slave. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but Jehovah is perfect, right? He's not capable of passing along any imperfect information. Same with Jesus. He's perfect too, right? So he's not capable of getting anything wrong. So between Jesus and the faithful and discreet slave, it gets screwed up? I mean, that's not even whispered down the lane. It's not going through anybody else. It's perfect from Jesus and screwed up by the slave. But this is who Jesus chose in 1919. An uninspired, not infallible, mistake-making organization that makes a statement that says, well, Jesus never said that the faithful slave would produce perfect spiritual food. How do you even make a statement like that? Are you serious? In fact, they still don't know what the truth is. Garrett Loesch admits that they're still roving about.
Do we keep up with the progressive understanding of truth? Daniel was told, "Many will rove about, and the true knowledge will become abundant." This is a gradual process. We are still roving about.
There's a religion you can trust, huh? Oh, and speaking of trust,
Since Jehovah God and Jesus Christ completely trust the faithful and discreet slave, should we not do the same?
so we can make the list a little longer. Not inspired, not infallible, make mistakes, and blasphemous. The Bible clearly says not to put your faith and trust in men. Why? Because they can't save you. That's why. So how on earth can you make a statement that both Jehovah and Jesus completely trust in imperfect, not infallible, mistake-making men who can't get the doctrine straight between Jesus and themselves? Now, if that wasn't bad enough, on top of all that, they ask for this.
At that time, the life-saving direction that we receive from Jehovah's organization may not appear practical from a human standpoint. All of us must be ready to obey any instructions we may receive, whether these appear sound from a strategic or human standpoint or not.
Wow! Complete, blind faith in imperfect, not infallible, mistake-making, blasphemous men. All right, I got to calm down here for a minute. I'm getting a little excited. But you should be too. Let me just take a deep breath. Now, seriously, think about this. You got those thinking caps on still? Think for a minute. They want you to obey whatever they tell you to do, even if it doesn't make sense. Jehovah's Witnesses. That's a huge red flag. I say you better watch out if at the next memorial they say it's okay for you to partake. Because a statement like that, that's exactly the scenario that Jim Jones created in Jonestown. Enough said. And now I'm going for the jugular. This is the knockout punch, okay? Stick with me here. This next clip is of Watchtower's own governing body member, Jeffrey Jackson, in August of 2015 at the Australian Royal Commission hearings into child sexual abuse. This was about 20 minutes into his testimony, and you can go online and look the whole thing up for yourself. But this clip, this says it all. Now, you may have seen this clip before, but I let it roll a little bit because there's something he says afterwards that's even more damning, and that's what I'm going to conclude with. But first, he answers the question, do you see yourselves as God's spokesperson on earth? Take it away, JJ.
And do you see yourselves as Jehovah God's spokespeople on earth?
That, I think, would seem to be quite presumptuous to say that we are the only spokesperson that God is using.
I know. Shocker, huh? But wait a minute. Hold it right there. I want to point something out. Angus Stewart did not ask him if they were the only spokesperson on earth. He just asked if they viewed themselves as God's spokespersons on earth. Could have been one of many. He didn't ask if they were the only ones, but Jeffrey Jackson said that it would be presumptuous to say that they're the only spokespersons God is using. He wasn't asked if they were the only ones. You see that? I just found that interesting, that he answered it in that way. But let's keep going.
The scriptures clearly show that someone can act in harmony with God's Spirit in giving comfort and help in the congregations.
All right, you see what he did there? Clearly, the scriptures show that someone in the congregation can be used to give someone comfort within the congregations. You see what he did there? He still kept it within the organization by saying that, okay? Because he sure as heck wasn't talking about Catholic congregations or Jewish congregations or any other religion's congregations. He was talking about the congregations of Jehovah's Witnesses. See, so that's kind of a soft backpedal to that statement. And that's why it's not the most damning statement that he makes in this clip. And here it comes.
But if I could just clarify a little, going back to Matthew 24, clearly Jesus said that in the last days, and if Jehovah's Witnesses believe these are the last days, there would be a slave, a group of persons who would have responsibility to care for the spiritual food. So in that respect, we view ourselves as trying to fulfill that role.
Did you catch that? Listen again.
We view ourselves as trying to fulfill that role.
There you have it. It all comes down to that. They view themselves. They view themselves as trying to fulfill that role. There you have it. Straight from the horse's mouth. They're just role-playing, guys. They're role-playing. They know that they're role-playing, but they tell you that they're God's faithful and discreet slave. They latch on to this little parable in Matthew as a basis to lord it over you, to control every aspect of your life and give them the power and make the claim that they are God's only organization, and you better obey everything, whether or not it makes sense from a human standpoint, from these uninspired, not infallible, mistake-making, blasphemous, lying role players. What else can I add to that? Except maybe this: Jeffrey Jackson has this potentially huge audience in this video, and it did turn out to be a huge audience who have seen it. In fact, among those concerned, the only ones who haven't seen it are Jehovah's Witnesses, because Watchtower doesn't show it to you. They don't put that in the news section on their website, and you're not allowed to look at it anywhere else because it's all on Satan's internet. But newsflash, so is jw.org. But the point here is Jeffrey Jackson's got this potentially big forum where he gets to give a witness to all the world about who these men are and the wonderful blessing that Jehovah has showered upon the earth by giving us this wonderful organization to dispense the truth of God and explain how God chose them in 1919 to be the faithful and discreet slave, bringing truth to mankind. But he didn't. He didn't. He said, we view ourselves as trying to fulfill that role. That's it. No divine appointment. No chosen by Jesus. Just role playing. So, Jehovah's Witnesses, if you're truly honest-hearted, how can you follow these men? If you can still follow these men after everything I've presented here, then you're still pretty far down brainwashing boulevard, I'd say. Anyway, I hope this has been informative, and please, please, Jehovah's Witnesses, do your research. All you got to do is act like you don't know anything about Jehovah's Witnesses and research it like you would anything else. I wonder what they're all about. And hit Google. And strap in, because it's going to be a wild ride. Some of you may not be able to handle it, but I can assure you that there is light at the end of the tunnel. But for now, I take my leave. Thanks for watching. I hope to have some more videos at some point in the future. I do have a little more free time now. I have fulfilled all my musical obligations, so no more working bands. The last one I was in was 10 years running, and that's like giving up a second job. So I have more free time, but also part of the reason I did that was to start some other new adventures, which, I don't know. There may have been a clue this whole time. Let the viewer who has Google discern what that might be all about. Until next time, thanks everybody.
Yeah, Dr. Jason Morrison, theologist again. I just want to say thank you for watching the videos, and I hope you got plenty of self-rediscovery and freedom out of it. If you watched it on YouTube, please share or like, maybe even comment. If you watched it on Facebook, like, comment, share. But most of all, get out and live. This isn't a rehearsal. You've got a one-off life. Don't let your loyalty and your faithfulness blind you to the life that you should be experiencing. Till the next video, thank you for watching, and bye for now.